For today's video we're going to take a look at a Dimplex DXDF20 2 kilowatt fan heater that's got a bit of a problem. If I just plug it into the power and turn it on, it's working okay, but you can start hearing that the fan is catching on the cowl, which it shouldn't be doing, and as it warms up that gets worse and worse until the fan stops. So we'll have a look, see what's actually wrong with it. Looking from the front of the machine, there's a massive gap between the top of the fan and the top of the cowling, but the bottom of the fan is virtually resting on the bottom of the cowling, and when it gets running it actually starts touching. And looking from the back, you can see that the motor is mounted to this disc in the centre of the back, and the rest of the back is perforated for the air to pass through. But the plastic the machine's made of is quite flexible, and what's happened over time is that the motor has drooped slightly and is now catching on the cowling. So if I switch the thing on, if I can find the button from this side, okay, here we go. If I slightly press the plastic here, you'll hear the motor catch. So all I need to do is reverse that and find a way to support the plastic so it keeps the blade centred in the cowling. The ideal engineering solution would be if the motor had a longer shaft that passed right the way through to a bearing at the front. But that's not going to happen, so other things we could do. We could put a little post from the bottom of the unit on the inside to the front of the motor just behind the fan to prop it up in the right position. Or equally, we could have a little bar coming down from the top to the top of the motor at the front just behind the fan to support it. But I think probably the approach I'm going to take is to put a brace probably between here and here, with a straight edge that supports that back edge in the correct position so the motor doesn't sag. But anyway, I'll take the case apart and I'll decide how I'm going to do it once I've taken it apart. To take the unit apart, we've got a couple of screws at the bottom with security heads on them, but that's not a problem. And it looks like there's a couple of clips, one on each side. So we'll undo the screws first. I'll see if I can do this without being in the way of the camera. As I say, they've got these special three-pronged security screws, which are a bit of a pain, but they're okay. Just get those out. That's one. And that is the second one. And the cable is going to have to pass through, so I'll pull a bit of slack into the cable. And then I'll pop it on its side and see what these clips are like. So here's one of the clips in the side. Let's have a look. I'll just put a bit of tension on it. Oh, and that's okay. They just unclip as easily as that. So that should be a case of the machine now in pieces. And there's a wasp in the workshop, so we'll have a look at that in a second. As fan heaters go, it's quite a nice machine, this one. It's got a digital thermostat which is pretty accurate, and I'm guessing that's the temperature sensor for the digital thermostat there. The motor unit is obviously here with the heating windings behind it, and I would guess there'll be a thermal overload protection on the circuit board built onto the side of the motor unit there. The main switching control circuit is at the top, and all that's working fine. It's just the problem with the sort of saggy plastic for the motor that we need to fix. Okay, I've put the fan heater back together for the moment because the only thing holding the electrical components in is the front cover, so I've just popped it back together so it doesn't all fall out on me. But I've had a look and there's plenty of clearance for me to attach some sort of backbone that will go from the top to the bottom and keep the rear of the fan heater straight so the fan doesn't droop. So all I've got to do is decide what I'm going to make it out of, and I could make it very easily out of a bit of metal that I could attach top and bottom, and it would just run in a straight line keeping the motor in place. Or I could make it out of plastic. I mean, in theory it would be fine doing it with metal because there's no way it's going to touch anything electrical inside, but if I do it out of plastic, it'll keep the outside case all plastic, so it's totally safe. So I'll see if I've got some suitable plastic to cut a backbone out of. Okay, I've made myself a template out of a bit of cardboard that will go on something like that and be screwed bottom and top to hold the motor in the right orientation. So I'm going to cut that out of a piece of, it's about 10mm thick polycarbonate. I think that should do the job. So I shall get cutting. Okay, that's our bracing piece installed. It was quite fiddly. I didn't really consider how difficult it was going to be to get to the screws because the actual motor mount is in the way to get a straight line down to the screw head. And also, I possibly should have thought about the fact the motor mounting screws are now hidden behind my brace. Luckily there's enough lateral movement that I can move it to one side to get the screws in. So now all I've got to do is reinstall the motor, which is going to be fiddly, and reinstall the electronics, which again is pretty fiddly, then put the two halves together and give it a test. So I'll do that lot off camera because otherwise you'll see me cursing and swearing for the next few minutes. Okay, that's everything back and installed. So the next thing to do is to put the front back on and give it a test, make sure it's working okay. And here's the machine back together with the brace installed. It's not beautiful, but equally it's not too bad looking, and it means the fan heater can be used. So now on with the testing. Okay, that's everything back together, so I'll plug it into a socket. And good, the display is working, so switch it on, and that's in the cold air setting at the moment. Nothing catching, so that's good. I'll put it into the sort of low heat setting. That's working. Nothing catching, again that's good. And put it onto the high heat setting. Excellent. Thermostatic controls working fine. And for a slightly closer look at the controls, a press of the power button turns the unit on. Then you can cycle between cold, low heat and high heat with the lower button. The temperature setting buttons on the right hand side allow you to dial in the room temperature you require. So I think all that's left to do is I think I'll give the case a bit of a clean before I give this back to its owner, and then that'll be job done. So yeah, I'll just show it again in a bit once I've cleaned the case. Okay, that's the case cleaned up and everything's working perfectly, so I think we can call that job done. If you've enjoyed watching, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. There'll be plenty more repairs and vintage stuff coming soon. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in a future video.